foster system. We want to ensure every child has a safe environment to grow and become healthy, successful adults.
Additionally, when I was in the foster care system, I had to defend for myself. Rescue the Foster is here to empower the youth aging out of the system and offer resources to ensure they are not dependent on the government.
What we observed was that children become institutionalized and end up in prison and providing the government with more funds.
Rescue the Foster will provide coaching, resume writing, interview skills, professional attire for interviews, budgeting, applying for college, and obtaining housing.
We want these youth to live the most freeing, successful life possible.
It is their right and our responsibility to ensure that our future kids and grandchildren can live happy lives.
Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord.
Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future.
Good evening and
I was
welcome
robbed.
to
They tried to
Rescue the Fosters. I thought I hit the pause button, but apparently I didn't. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I am Gino, your host, and as always, next to me, the co-founder and co-host of Rescue the Fosters, Miss Sylvia Beachy. Sylvia, how are you tonight?
I'm good, Gino. How are you?
Doing good. Your hair looks great, Sylvia.
Thank you.
Inside joke.
right.
Oh, another great show. We have returning guest Kelly Hawley from Warrior Bride Ministries. She is the president and founder of Warrior Bride Ministries. Kelly's been on 3 different times, once solo, another time with Gina Phillips, and now she's with our next guest, Nathan Reynolds, who is an author and speaker. I am not going to go into their long bios. They are well accredited and fascinating people. I love, Kelly, what you're doing down there in Georgia with your ministry, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at the conference we just showed. That's going to be an amazing event. A lot of great speakers. And Kelly, I'm going to start with you. If you could just kind of give a brief bio of yourself for the audience, and then we'll get to you, Nathan.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me again. I always enjoy coming, and just exposing some of the things that are going on and letting people know that there are people who care out there and there are resources. And so every time that we get the opportunity to speak out, you never know what the Lord will do with the word. So I appreciate this opportunity. And as far as me, I'm the founder of Warrior Bride Ministries. I've been ministering to the sexually abused for somewhere around 18 years now. That was a calling after I had been sexually abused in my life, and it set me on a trajectory of trauma and wounding that the Lord was the only answer for healing me. And it was a journey, but as I went on it with him and he healed me, he put me in place to start helping others. And that was another journey, because at first, about 18 years ago, I thought most sexually abused people would look kind of like me, kind of like mine, which is at this point the most commonly known, which would be, the stepfather, the coach, the teacher, this type of thing. But as he had me meeting with them and ministering his healing, he started sending some that had different stories, and some of them at first were a lot of trafficking. And so I learned a lot about what that looked like and who was actually involved and some of the nuances of that versus the sexually abused. Not that they're not sexually abused, but it's just another layer. And then after that, about, maybe 9 years ago now, he started sending a lot of people that had these stories that to me sounded absolutely impossible. But after you get so many of them and they're from different parts of the world and they're different ages and some male, some female, just they didn't have commonality in terms of that. At a certain point, you have to believe it. And not only that, there started being a lot of visible signs to it. So what it ended up being is ritual abuse. When I first really got confronted with it, I started looking for somebody to help me understand what is this that the Lord wants me to do. Like, it was obvious I was supposed to do something because so many were coming, but I didn't know what to do. And there really wasn't many that were out there talking about it, teaching about it, anything. But I was lucky enough to find somebody named Kay Tolman. This was probably back in 2014 or 15, something like that. And I went to Oklahoma to sit under some of her intensives, and it was intense. It was like drinking from a fire hose. And I just had to, take what I could from it because it was a bit overwhelming, but the Lord is so good. And he just kept unfolding it, at the rate that I could handle it. And then about, maybe 7 years ago, he sent me some pretty high-end survivors to walk one-on-one with. And that was where I learned a whole lot. He taught me what to literally like, do this now, do that now. This is important to them. You need to do this now. And so for the last 7 years, I've been working primarily with ritual abuse survivors, which leads into government-sponsored mind control. So then I had to learn that level of it as well. And I'm still learning because it's so complex and deep. I'm still learning, but thank the Lord, I only have to know a little bit and have to be obedient. And he moves and he does what he needs to do and teaches me along the way. So Warrior Bride Ministries, I officially started it almost 5 years ago. I have waiting list. I always try to get everybody in, but there's such a demand and there's so few people that are willing to be obedient to this, really, I'd have to say, because he has to be speaking and talking to other people because the need's so great. But people are, afraid. They don't know who they are in Christ, in my opinion. There's got to be some reason they're not rising up, but there are more. Every year, it seems like there's more people that are heeding the call and starting to serve them and starting to come together in unity. And that's one reason we have the conference every year, is to make a space for those, what I would call frontliners in this arena, to come together, to get to know each other, to build trust, to understand what everybody's lane is, and to make a space for survivors to come to and for them to start trusting us as well, because their trust has been so broken in so many ways, from their abusers, but even from the church and, even people that didn't mean to, but they just didn't understand. And they might think, well, if a fragment, which is, when trauma is so severe, often they have multiple personalities. And if a personality came up, often the church would just think it was a demon and start re-traumatizing them. And it's just been a real hard road for them. But I'm excited that the Lord is waking people up. I remember when I first started serving, however long ago it was, 18 years ago or something, you could not talk about sexual abuse, just basic sexual abuse. Nobody wanted to hear it. Nobody wanted to talk about it. But now it seems like that's common knowledge. People, at least recognize it. It's not shocking, unfortunately, of course. But I see it starting to be that way where it's becoming a little more well-known and we can talk about it. And when we can face it and talk about it, we can start doing something about it. So I'm excited about these days where people are starting to respond.
Oh, thank you so much. It is the best and worst of times. I say this all the time. I do believe Babylon is falling. I do believe we're in for some really good days ahead for the church. And justice and righteousness will prevail. Obviously it's the 1,000-year millennial reign of Christ. I wish it was now. That will be coming. But I do believe the church, the bride, has been called right now to get itself together. Let's face it, the church has been a mess for a while. We have all kinds of infiltration. We have a whole bunch of people pretending to be pastors that should have never been a pastor. We have wokeism running through the halls of the church. The body's, I don't want to say it's in disrepair because God can repair anything, but it would appear that way, that it's so broken that it would never rebound. But the church has faced all through the centuries so many challenges, so many hardships, and we've always prevailed because he is the head and we are his feet and hands and the body. And I'm with you 100%, Kelly. I mean, me and Sylvia knows this better than anybody. We've tried to get people to come forward, former social workers, people in the system, to come out of foster care and adoption and all these different CPS. And no one wants to come forth, and they don't even have to put their face on a screen. I mean, if they want to do it in private, we're willing to just talk to you and you'll have complete anonymity. But up to this point, it just seems like very few. The harvest is great and the harvesters are few. And it's, I got to tell you, it's frustrating deep down inside, but I know God has the perfect people and the perfect timing. So we're going to place it in his hands, and we just try to sit back and wait for the people to come in that are going to be able to help us in this journey of healing. There's so many people that need healing. I think about it often. I pray for Rescue the Fosters all the time, that it's going to be a beacon of hope and healing and reunification. And just God doing a miraculous work in people's lives that thought they were broke completely and would never get restored. So I know that's similar to what Warrior Bride Ministries does there. And we're so thankful that you're a friend, and I can't wait to get to the conference. Nathan, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Nathan, I was telling you before the show, we didn't get to talk much because I was doing technical stuff, but I did watch a couple of your videos today. You've got a rather large following over there on YouTube. Congratulations. That's awesome. But you wrote a book, it's Snatched from the Flames. And I think, I don't want to give it away. I know what it's about because I was reading the bio and I read a couple other reviews on it. And it does seem to have quite a few good reviews. And I believe it's autobiographical. Am I correct?
That's correct. Yes.
It is. Okay. Well, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Yeah. Well, yeah, my name is Nathan Reynolds. I am a speaker, author, a father of a ridiculously growing family at this point in my life, which is profound and one of the hardest things I've ever gone through. So just going to put that all into the firm context that we all need out there. But yes, I have had quite a variety of little hats that I have worn along the way, from wilderness mentor to executive protection agent, an armorer, a farmer, regenerative rancher. And I like to learn and grow, and I have an insatiable curiosity and a need to understand the world, which has been one of the greatest gifts that my Creator ever gave me. He bestowed upon me a need to understand. And it was absolutely part of the fundamental keys that unlocked the doors of the prison cell I was born into. So I was not born into a traditional family by any stretch of the imagination. It was a very duplicitous existence, and it was a house, a den of iniquity, with no uncertain terms, where there was an ever-present darkness that was stalking me from the days of my earliest youth. I think the best way to articulate it is radical intelligent evil. And I borrow that from an incredible mentor of mine named Dr. Michael Lake and Mary Lou Lake. They have a phenomenal ministry that I highly recommend, those of you that haven't. There are not a lot of advocates. There are some. It's always wonderful when I get to meet others that are on that front line and are picking up a ridiculous onslaught of a burden to bear in trying to be advocates for victims and survivors and overcomers and people that are well entrenched into the depths of despair and doubt and depravity. But my family followed a deep religious fervor, and the religion that they observed was one that really believed that knowledge and secret knowledge in particular was the path and the ascension work towards apotheosis, towards godhood, towards immortality, and the power to discern right from wrong, good from evil, the power to control both. And ultimately, it's rooted in Luciferianism. And I use that distinctly for those of you that might be always junk drawer and everything into satanic stuff. There's a distinction inside cults that is important, because somebody who goes through a lifetime abuse or a experiential encounter with a Satanist is going to have a different experience than someone that's a Luciferian. And it's easy for people that grow up in the church to just think everything's the same. It's all just Satan as a junk drawer term, but it's different, you know. And my grandfather on my mother's side was is a Fourth Order Knights of Columbus down in Lake Havasu City, Arizona, and their business was the exploitation of children for means of behavior modification, and that was very religious based in Catholicism. Really, they're practitioners of the Counter Reformation. You know, the Knights of Columbus had a devotees that were really more Jesuits in nature, willing to cut, kill, covet, steal, masquerade, and put on the hats of any other individual around them to accomplish the fidelity to the Pope. And these people really did believe that calling upon these old serpents, these ancient serpents, would give them power of foretelling, future telling. And so they engaged in ritual magic in the form of sexual abuse of children as a means to split the veil of spiritual hierarchy, to use a phone book that had been passed along generationally from the old gods and the old religions that kind of were really the holdovers of the religions of Nimrod and Semiramis, and the gods that dictated their instructions to mankind. And so I grew up believing that this type of child exploitation and child abuse was normal in family members. And on the other side of it, my parents at home back in Flagstaff, Arizona, operated as normal Christians. And that is the whole entire addition of my life, was to blend in, to go along, to get along, to be background noise, to be undetected, and to hide in plain sight. And so my family are descendants of a much more powerful family out on the east side of the country. And the Reynolds family has a very deep, strong generational hold on power. And there's two kind of main forefront public branches to the Reynolds family. That's the tobacco empire, and that's the aluminum empire. But there's also this middle distance one that does a lot of the money laundering and a lot of the what would we call black gold, things that are designed for trafficking and secrecy and blackmail. Really, there's no other way around it. And so that's what my family utilized their children as a bank account that could be exploited and then sold off to people in positions of power, or not necessarily always yet in positions of powers, but just to compromise them and to utilize homosexuality and pedophilia as a means to put a vice on the necks of people that aren't going to follow after their commands. And so I grew up believing that these things were normalized and okay, and it led me into a lot of rage and a lot of desire for an opportunity to fight back, an opportunity to stop it. And I got caught up very deeply in a land of violence and of bloodshed and of seeking the death of perverts. And anybody that covered up these crimes, or anybody that I believed or was convinced to believe, led to believe, were perpetrators of these crimes, I had justifications to go after them and to hunt them. And so I began to do that with an absolute dedication and a fervor throughout the teenage years of my life, and led me into a path of the United States military and joining up in with the United States Air Force initially, kind of covertly, and then later on in the United States Army as a junior in high school. I got emancipated to the United States Army and shipped out to Fort Knox, Kentucky, and got to learn how to be a trained murderer, like every United States soldier is. You know, every soldier you've ever met is a trained murderer, and they take normal people and turn them into murderers. That's the goal. And I experienced what I thought was going to be my outlet, my escape, and my freedom in the military. And I got to learn very, very painfully that idols are bad when they're placed in the hearts of men, you know, and I fundamentally made the United States military my savior. And I believed that that's where my power and my deliverance was going to come from, was having a team of operators that I could go out and do clandestine special kill teams activities with. And it led me into a world of deep criminal investigations and seeing that really the people that were in the highest positions of power and the ones on the surface that seemed to be the the people that should rescue people, the teams that should be doing counter human trafficking, and the people that should have been doing justice were in fact putting their own people in positions of competence and power and using the same mechanisms to procure black budget operations funding to do the same things. And there were stand down orders, and there was a constant betrayal and a dog eat dog lifestyle, and it utterly ruined me, and it left me completely devoid of hope. And it was into the midst of that time in my life, and starting to get washed out of the military and getting discharged honorably, and suffering traumatic brain injuries and going down the road of losing my mind and losing my body, and finding that amidst that really the healer, the great physician, Jesus of Nazareth, Yeshua the Messiah, as I've come to really know him in a more deeper and intimate way, had a plan and a purpose for my life, that he would ransom me and rescue me and set my feet on a rock and give me the opportunity to come out of a path of hatred. And he showed me that there was a better way that was found amongst his people. And he began to slowly work on me a regenerative path of there is hope still found in mankind, that not all mankind needs to die. Not everyone is complicit in these acts, but at the same time that the words of our testimony, like it says in Revelation 12:11, the enemy, the dragon, that devil of old, is defeated by the blood of the Lamb, the words of our testimony, and not loving our lives when faced with death. And you know what? That's what he really appointed me to be in this life, is to try to continue to call out to others, to try to be brave and to be bold and to come forward and speak the secrets and tell the truths of their testimony, no matter what it costs them. We are issued an edict by our commander to go therefore into all the nations, preaching the gospel of this kingdom to every creature. You know it? And his word is there to guide us and to lead us as an instruction book. And then he has this incredible body of believers that if we work together and we stop infighting and dividing ourselves according to the ways of the enemy, we can be effective and absolutely valiant to overcome the days of darkness that we are in.
Man.
Amen to all that. Man, that was good.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah, I don't know. I've often thought this. I don't know how anybody gets through a day without him at the center of their life. With things so topsy-turvy, I don't know how people can just get up in the morning and go through their day in their own mental capacity, in their own strength, and just go up against it every day. I mean, I've been a Christian 22 years now, and I haven't regretted one moment of it. It utterly changed my life. I was a very anxious person, even though people on the outside would have never known that. They always thought I was just smiley and happy all the time, but inside I was just a ball of anxiousness, and I thought it was normal. I didn't even know what it was. And when the Lord showed me that I could get rid of this and I didn't need to carry it, it set me free. It revolutionized my life. And even though we still go through tribulations and all these trials and things that we have to go through in this life, at the end of the day I have perfect peace. I have that peace that surpasses all understanding in Jesus Christ. And I just don't know how anybody wouldn't want that or how they could survive without it. I just don't. Sylvia, someone in the chat said your volume needs to go up just a little bit, if you can do that. So Nathan, that's an amazing testimony there. So when you were in the military, I know you said that you were trained to kill, and obviously, I mean, the name of the game is killing. If you go to war, you're going to kill. In your mind, you were at such a tender age. I mean, you were so impressionable. Were you kind of like bloodthirsty at that point and saying, yeah, this is exactly what I need to get rid of this rage and, and anger and hatred inside of me? Or did you know, like, innately, like, boy, that doesn't really sound that good. I thought killing was bad.
I never thought killing was bad by any stretch of the imaginations. Murder is a different thing. That's a distinction of categories. It does not say you shall not murder or you shall not kill. It says you shall not murder. There's a distinction of terms that are given to us in the instructions of the Most High for a reason. But by no means whatsoever, I saw killing on a continual basis from the earliest memories of my life. I understood that life was fragile and fleeting. And the vast majority of the time growing up, I was under the assumption that death was an inevitability, an unstoppable absolute that was coming for every man, woman, and child that was ever born and will be born, that death is the final enemy, period. That is it. There is one final enemy and one final fear every man and woman and child must face, which is the fear of death. We have all kinds of fears that plague us, and seek to devour and consume us, the fear of men, fear of what other people think of us, the fear of lack, the fear of not having enough love and hope and joy to get through it, enough energy in the tank to get through a day. All these fears are what consume people day and night. And for me, death was if anything, a very fickle little finger to scratch a chalkboard with. It had no meaning or bearing when it came to morality. I was raised in a very amoral family. That does not mean we had no morality. That was not immoral. That morality was applied very distinctly based off of a justification set list. Like we had rules, guidelines, a covenant to live by. And my family was in a covenant with the principality of death. First and foremost, they sought power and they were given that power, and that power was manifested to them in supernatural ways when people called and invoked these entities through blood sacrifice and ritual magic and the practice of what's called inurement, which is where their children were physically passed through the fires to Moloch. And that wasn't always being immolated. Oftentimes, that was the grandfather passing the grandson through sexual abuse. That was a form of transformative power. And the hardest, deepest innate desire that was kind of uncovered in me was a need for justice, was a need to seek the righting of the wrongs, because I witnessed so many. Learned helplessness was foundational to the formulation of the trauma in my life, that there was no escaping the cult. There was no way I could ever get out, that everybody was basically to some level in on it. And, you know, they're very persuasive to you, especially when you're very little. It's easy for them to manipulate the situations and the people around you to make you feel like they have omniscience or omnipotence. And so you become caught up in a belief and a conviction that that's reality. But for me, the first acts of death took place when I was, 6 years old. Those were my first time experiencing death through my own hands and getting power, getting the fear, the look of absolute fear and terror in the eyes of my enemy and my target, and getting to see the heart of a man when they understand that inevitable death dealer has arrived at their doorstep. And so for me, death, by the time I was into the military, was something that I had been so well seasoned with and so well practiced with. It was nothing more than new methodology, new training, new techniques, new tactics that the military offered me, new weaponry, a new arsenal, a team, which was something that was very foreign to me to operate under, and still was very awkward for me to utilize, firing teams and squads and direction, like very, very different. Everything that I was trained up in was the arts of silent killing, using poisons, using pushing people out of windows and off bridges and trying to cause them to look like accidental deaths. There was a very different tapestry of tricks that I was trained in early on. And so by the time I got to the military, it was if anything, it was the great joy for me to go after people that I had literal dossiers handed to me of videos and pictures of people that were in the acts of child exploitation, people that were running pedophilia rings in Alexandria, Virginia. Like, it was very easy because I had a license to kill, and they understood that there was a judge, jury, and executioner. The Department of Defense basically issued out these kill orders on what they called find, fix, and finish categories in the war on terror, the war on counterterrorism, and operations that were taking place in the United States. So there was a lot of license to kill taking place in 2000s, and it was justified domestically as well as abroad.
Man. Yeah, I can imagine it was a more efficient way also of killing, right? I mean, just let's cut to the chase, right? Let's just end this and end it quickly and without any trace of evidence. And it's kind of it's really, I don't want to say kind of, it is disturbing that mindset can be so easily instilled in people, especially someone that's very young and impressionable and susceptible to that type of thing. But this happens daily in our military, and I thank God for the military. I love our military. I'm thankful that they protect our country and everything they do for us. But that we have to accept that there is this part that is pretty disturbing and pretty ugly. And that goes for there's some other occupations that I could think of off the top of my head that are very similar, where it's basically, this is what you're going to do. That's your assignment. Do it to the best of your ability. And we don't want to hear anything other than, a win at the end of the day, a W. Kelly, I know you deal with a lot of these mindsets. How much of this, I know when we had you and Gina on last time, that was such a great conversation, by the way. Oh my
No,
gosh,
thank
the,
you.
the fragmenting, the programming, all of that was just so informative, and I can't wait to have you and Gina back for another episode. But
Sure.
the one thing I didn't realize, I guess, was that the fragmenting is such a critical part of this. I knew about the programming and the brainwashing, MK Ultra, and all this stuff, but I never realized how the brain could be fragmented. And it
Mhm.
sounds like Nathan, like your mind was fragmented in a sense to be able to do one specific thing here, and then you have another compartment for another thing, and I guess in a sense we're all maybe a bit fragmented by design because of the way our lives are shaped. But the fragmenting you're talking about is someone actually programming fragmenting into the person, or they're fragmenting because of trauma. Am I correct in that, Kelly?
So I talk about trauma in a continuum, and dissociation is a gift from the Lord, natural dissociation. He knew that we would have trauma here, and so if the trauma got too hard, a part of our mind and soul could break off and go behind an amnesic wall, and then when we're ready to deal with it, that wall could come down and we could get healing and bring it together. And that can be on just a partial fragmentation, that probably all of us have a little bit of until we get healing. That can be more like a persona. And then you just kind of go up the spectrum. And then under natural DID, you can get full parts where they have their own mind, will, and emotion. But what the enemy has done via, it took another turn when after World War II, when the Nazi scientists came over here and stuff. And they started purposely fragmenting the children. They found out that if you get a child young enough, you can they can dissociate easier and better and have cleaner splits. And then they can start traumatizing them and training them to do what they wanted them to do ultimately. And so it got to the point, and it's probably still today to the point, where a lot of times they're getting fragmented while they're in the mother's womb. It's very sinister. They have people, children as young as I've heard 8, usually it's 12 or 13, but I have heard younger, where they're having them have children just for the purpose of doing this, but also looking for those who have a God-given gift that they can utilize. So they test the children, and they determine based on bloodline and natural abilities of, are you going to be somebody that we can train with your intellect, which we call gamma programming? Or are you going to be a beta sex kitten? Or are you going to be assassin? Or are you going to be theta, which is like psychic warfare? So they do all this testing on them, and they determine what your value is in their mind anyways. And so some of them, the minute they're born, they're put up for sacrifice. Some go through the testing and are determined they're disposables, and then they'll be used for rituals and things of that sort. But some, they determine that they want to put the money in, the effort in, and they start this awful long, history from the very beginning of starting to sexually abuse them. I'm talking about when they're in the womb, they're doing stuff with instruments with it. It's just unbelievable, but it's happening, and it's not just onesie twosie. That's what we have to understand. This is millions of people. This is planned, organized. They're very organized. Thank the Lord that we have him, because they're so focused on their goals of winning the war, the ultimate war against Yeshua and humanity, where we aren't so organized. But with the Lord and his 2/3 angels that didn't get thrown down, didn't go with Lucifer, and his body, who he's raising up and training, we will have that victory that we were promised. And so that's what we can rest in. if we just truly believe in him and trust in the Lord and get in our positions and do whatever he's calling us to do and to not fear, because there's really nothing better than spending your day partnering with him, because he shows up all the time. He's showing up. And if you could, I can't think of anything I'd rather do than to be with him showing up as he heals people and does miracles. Now, the miracles are not a magic wand. He's not a genie. I mean, this trauma took a while to happen, so it's taken a while to undo. One of the main goals of the abusers is to deny your humanity, for you to think that it's bad, that humans are bad, and that you do not want to be human. So you got to work with each part of them that denied their humanity. You've got to work with each part of them that made a deal with some entity because they were being traumatized, and they were told as children, if you make a deal with this entity, the trauma will stop and he'll protect you and he's your friend. All along making Yeshua, Jesus Christ of Nazareth, the enemy by dressing up as him and abusing them, reading scripture over them while they're doing this, manipulating it where it makes it look like Yeshua was there and he was weak and couldn't help them, or afraid, or just different things where they're just manipulating the children at such a young age because they want you to deny Yeshua. And I do think it's very interesting how they don't do that with Buddha or Muhammad or whoever. It's Yeshua, Jesus Christ of Nazareth, that they do it. And I'm very specific, and I think Nathan is too, about what we call him, because there is a fake Jesus, and he manipulates them a lot. And so that was a hard lesson I had to learn in the beginning. I didn't know that I was, sending some of them to the fake ones, but the Lord's good and helps me redeem them, get them back. But once you learn that, you want to be very specific on which Jesus you're talking about, because there are fake ones.
Absolutely. And just so the audience is clear, we're talking about the biblical Jesus, the one we find in the New Testament, and pre-incarnate Jesus in the Old Testament.
Yes. His name is Yeshua. If you really, look at Hebrew, and so I'm often very specific on Jesus Christ of Nazareth as well as Yeshua. Yeah. So, I mean, it gets complex, but really it's a matter of replacing the lies with the truth, and almost like an individual sanctification process for each one of the parts where they meet him, get in touch with the emotion, because when they have this fragmentation, often an emotion gets trapped there. So let's say all their joy gets trapped with some of the parts, or all their love, or all their even anger. I mean, sometimes they end up being almost like dead men walking, because all their emotions are trapped in these different parts. So that's part of what we have to do is get in touch with them and let them get in touch with their emotions and start releasing it and come into life. It's really like becoming alive again after the enemy tried to kill them and use them.
Wow. So if you're joining us late, we are talking about Counting the Cost event. I'm going to put up the flyer right now. And what a great event. Again, I'm so glad that Warrior Bride Ministries is holding this event. This is the 4th annual Counting the Cost conference. If you're interested in tickets, you can go to the website, warriorbrideministries.com. There's a tab you can click on to buy tickets. I have all the links in the description box below this video here on Rumble, both for Nathan and for Kelly and for the event. So you guys can go there. And if you are interested, we will see you in Georgia. And gosh, that's only like, a month and a half away.
Yeah, it's coming up quick. I do want to mention we are doing 50% off for pastors and church leaders, because we really want you to start understanding this. There's so many people in their congregations that they don't even realize it. They don't understand what's wrong with them. They're rejected, whatever. We really need to learn, because again, there's millions of people that have gone through this, and they need you. They need us. They need us to really love them, to let agape love of Yeshua flow through us. We are the church. We're supposed to be the spiritual hospital. And so, 50% off, and there's food, there's meals served, and so it's not a bad deal.
That's such a key point that you bring up with pastors. Most church leadership does not know this stuff's going on. They're very, and I don't want to say naive. I don't know. Maybe they turn a blind eye to it. Maybe they just don't know. They're ignorant. But I will say this. I have a guest on. He comes on every 5-6 weeks. His name's Joseph Jordan. He's from Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind, CE4 Research. And back about 30 plus years ago, he discovered that, well, I'll be darned, aliens are actually demons. They're not coming from, some distant star or something in the universe. So his ministry has been about getting people out of these so-called abduction situations by using the name of Yeshua, Jesus. And he's had immense success. He's got tons of testimonies. He's written a couple books, and he's such a great guest. I love having him on. He's got such a nice, really calm demeanor and everything. But it's funny because you had mentioned pastors not really understanding this, and that made me think about when we have him on, because we mentioned it all the time, that the church just wants to just turn its head and say, oh gosh, everything's going to be fine. Jesus will take care of it. But Jesus told us to go out and do that work. We're to occupy till he comes. Occupy doesn't mean we just sit around and we lay on a bed and kick back and wait for the rapture or something. Like I think this whole theology that's been preached to the church over the last probably 50 years, maybe even a little longer, is that we're just going to sit back, the rapture's going to come, and everything's going to be hunky-dory, and then we're just going to all go in heaven and hang out and, sit on clouds and play harps or something. It's this nonsensical thing that we've been taught. And I'm, for one, am sick of it. I call it plastic Christianity. I'm done with it. Like we got to be the hands and feet. We have to do something. I used to sit on my hands and do nothing. I always said, well, someone else will take care of it. Someone else will take care of it. And then I decided, you know what? I think God's telling me to take care of something. Maybe I should actually listen and do that. So we're all like-minded here. I know we're all people of action, and we want to see people healed. We want to see them come to the Lord and get salvation. And I think that motivation is very transparent with you, Kelly, and also with you, Nathan, that it's not about money. It's not about fame and fortune. It's about seeing people delivered, healed, and set free in Jesus' name. And I commend both of you for doing that. Nathan, I want to go back and touch on something. You had mentioned the Reynolds family, Reynolds Wrap, Reynolds cigarettes. I mean, obviously just a huge, huge industry. Is there direct ties to the family, or were you just, is it like, distant relatives? Because I think I read in your bio, coming out of that empire, the Reynolds empire. Maybe you can explain that a little more in depth.
Yeah, the empire that my family comes from is one that controls the secrecy and the black money side of it. It is not the direct heraldry of Joshua Cox. That's the actual original ancestor who held the Judas coin and began a lot of the path work of the Reynolds family that people are thinking of with the Reynolds Wrap. And that has its own origins. A whistleblower came out in that family line. His name is Patrick Reynolds. For those of you that are interested, he wrote a book which is called The Gilded Leaf. I highly recommend those of you that want to read it, in which he does talk about the origins of their family being based off of ritual magic with the Judas coin, one of the 30 pieces of silver. They called it the Joshua coin in their family heraldry. And the ones who used that coin grew empires of power, and anybody who grew those, the price was a bunch of bloodshed. All of the money came through the death of the people that were involved. But my family kind of hacked their way into a lot of this on the Reynolds side because of discoveries of mounds. There was archaeologists that were involved in my great-great-grandfather's side of the family line in the Ohio River Valley that began to excavate Indian mounds, Native American mounds. And some of those mounds contained a priest. There was an entire priest class that was buried inside one of these in the tombs of this cult that worshipped Huachiblos, one of the fire gods, the fire dragon of like the Aztec cultures during the times of the 1500s and 1400s, when there was a massive power shifts that began to take place in the Americas. A lot of that priest class came north, fleeing the cult of Marianism, all of the Catholics invasion through the conquistadors or Hernan del Cortez and the purge that came from that. Well, a lot of those carriers of that priest class and of that occult knowledge, they brought that up here into the Americas and infiltrated the Native American culture and brought to them the same type of child trafficking and human trafficking, exploitation that those gods require. There's an obsession with cannibalism inside that old religion, and that's literally because they're following the curse of what the serpent was given in the garden. Like the fallen seraph that we think of as Satan. Listen, he was cursed to crawl on his belly and to eat dust all the days of his life. And the eating of dust is mankind. Like mankind was created from dust we came and from dust we return. And so the enemy, the dragon, like he has a literal bloodlust, an insatiable lust to consume mankind. And this is why the priests, those are the ones that are the bridge builders between the spiritual realm and the physical realm, why they practice in this, what we would think of as this abhorrent evil. But listen, even all the way in the days of throughout history, the Israelites themselves, the chosen people of Yah, they themselves came into following after these same occult practices under the leadership and the influence of their kings. They went about whoring like under the sins of Jeroboam, and they began to follow these same things until the days of the sons of Hezekiah. These are like the reformers, the great reformers of Israel. They were literally leading Israel into more debauchery, evil, the consumption of their own children, the eating of their own flesh and blood that was worse than all of the Amalekites and all of the Zamzummim, the Zumines, and the ites that were in the land that were driven out. The Israelites themselves and the sons of the house of Judah were beginning to do greater abominations. And that's the same thing of what's taking place today in the nation that we call the Christian-fearing nation. This is the hub of iniquity in this nation. They have placed themselves under the dominion of Quetzalcoatl. That is literally where we get our name, America. The land of America literally means land of the plumed serpent. That is the etymology of the word America. It does not come from this geographer. This land has been called that by the name of the plumed serpent. That was the god over this nation. And you know what? We are still living in that same iniquitous force. And the visions of New Atlantis, the Rosicrucians, and a lot of the secret societies that were, the non-elected governing officials that were actually in charge of much of the cultivation of this nation, they issued forth proclamations and prophecy under the influence of those same spiritual powers that this land would become a beacon, a new Atlantis, as Francis Bacon dictated, a new Atlantis that would accept and cultivate and protect secret societies' religious rights to do witchcraft, sorcery, divination, occultism, homosexuality, transsexuality, all of these things that are absolutely abhorrent to morality, biblical morality. This nation was being chosen as the pyramid with which to build that house's power. My family were people that took those rites and rituals and magics and used them as a way to grow in power and influence, to rise on to that, to climb on and parasitically attach themselves to the dynastic families of old. So my family had different kingship, different heraldry than those of Abraham Reynolds and the descendants of Joshua Cox.
Wow, that's fascinating. There's a movie, Belly of the Beast. I believe it's by Fourth Watch Productions, which is the Fall Brothers in conjunction with Skywatch TV. And they talk a lot about the origins and etymology of America. And yeah, you're right on with that, Nathan. I recommend that documentary. It's very in depth on the origins of our country and who were the founders of the country. I think you'd find that very interesting. Sylvia, did you want to chime in? I'm hogging the microphone.
Oh, no,
Sorry.
you're good. I'm enjoying it. But I do want to, because rituals is something that people are having the hardest time to understand and believe that it's really happening. But when I was working in the foster system, that's where I noticed that a lot of the majority of kids that were coming in, they were sexually abused, and they were at the time I didn't know it, but they were put through these rituals where it was like an orgy or things like that. And they were groomed from very young, like toddler, like you were saying, like it's very, very young. It's not to where it almost becomes their norm, and they don't realize that it is any different. But also, do you think, like, the other part that I noticed was that the children in foster care, they struggled with just being away from their family, like the traumatization of being ripped from their family, not being allowed to be around them, not being like they could not function. So is that part of fragmentation?
Well, what they do is attachment is very, very important. There's tons of studies that if you have take an orphanage and if you don't give them some attachment, some touch, some form of love, they'll die.
Yeah.
And so the occult knows that attachment is so important. So what they do is they literally bond somebody with the child and then break it, and then bond and break it, and bond and break it. So attachment is really messed up at, for these survivors. Matter of fact, one of the things we do is work with attachment theories and help them move from insecure attachment to secure attachments. So it is one of the big things that the cult uses. And, you start to get the whole Patty Hearst syndrome with a lot of it. What's it called again? Where they attach to their abusers and they start to
Stockholm.
Yeah, Stockholm syndrome. You get, a form of that, but it's very manipulative, and attachment is a big thing. So yes, you will have that. And you will also have some programming that some of them won't know that that's their abusers. There'll be programming called Go Home.
To run me over with the getaway car. He
That's
almost
not me,
killed me
right?
right over here.
It's not me either.
Okay. I'm like,
I
hope
have
didn't
no
touch
idea. I have no idea what was going on.
with my
Didn't have
hands
anything
going all over as I talk. I was like, did I touch something?
That was on my end somewhere. Sorry about that.
Okay. So one of the programs is called Come Home or Go Back Home programming. And so they will be programmed to come home, to get tune-ups, to go to rituals, to do different things. So that is one of the programs as well. So it's kind of, a combination, but that is a big issue. One thing about the whole inability to recognize it, I have one person that I've worked with for 4 years now. She was on the far right stream in terms of how extreme it was. Like, she was a programmer herself, had just a lot happen for a long time. She was in therapies with people prior to coming to Warrior Bride for 10, 15 years. The traditional, counseling, and some of them knew DID, and a lot of therapists don't even know DID. And some of her counselors were, and therapists were handlers themselves. But she did know that she was DID at least through those 15 years. But when she came to our first conference, she realized that she was SRA because her parts felt safe, according to her. This is what she says. At the conference, they felt safe, and they just started coming up and, wanting to meet us and talk. And that's her first realization after 15 years of counseling that she was even SRA. So they have to feel safe. They have to, but they also, whenever they realize somebody understands, then that helps them to feel safe too, because so many people don't understand. So that's another reason why we just have to educate ourselves so that we can let them know, hey, I understand, and I'm not afraid, and I'm here. I want to be here for you. I want to talk to you. I want to, whatever, just be there for them. Sometimes that's all it is. They just want somebody to be there. I would like to mention about the whole UFO thing. I was listening. I had to go pick somebody up today, so I had a long drive. So I was listening to a interview of somebody that it was under the guise of UFO abduction and stuff. And I was like, this is everything she was saying is ritual abuse, but she doesn't know it. She thinks it's UFO, but really when you look at the two, they come together. It's the same thing. And yes, they are principalities and demons and entities and stuff like that. But that is one thing that part of the theme this year for the conference is collision of realms. And it's several realms. It's the coming together of realizing that the UFO thing is the mind control and MK Ultra and all of that. It is the same thing. It's a collision between prayer ministers and traditional therapists of understanding, hey, they need a part of what you do and a part of what we do. You don't have to go against each other. It's just this coming together because we're having to learn truth, and learn how to work together for their betterment. And so that's some of the things we really want to try to look at big picture and help us all understand that these are the same things, and what you do is valuable and what you do is valuable, but we need all of it, and we're all valuable, and we need to come together in unity and help the survivors and help put an end to this.
Agreed, 100%. You know, gosh, this is probably 10 years now. I remember I was doing research on UFOs and aliens and all that stuff, and I knew it wasn't real, but I'm like, there's got to be something to this. There's like a commonality. So I was watching a lot of, gosh, what was the name? I think it was called Ghost Adventures or something. It was on A&E or something. And I was watching all these different shows for research. Now, what I wasn't aware is I was actually opening doors to my own home for allowing all this garbage in. And, you know, I'd pray and all that stuff beforehand. But what I did notice is a lot of odd things were starting to happen around my life when I started researching all of this stuff. And I did finally break free from all that stuff. But the point was, I started seeing a common thread. Nathan, you mentioned a tapestry earlier. That's what I kind of equated to. It was all these different threads. It was, you know, whether it was ghost, demon possession, if it was UFOs, alter personalities, all these different things. I noticed, well, there's like this common thread. There's something that's going on that I see the same thing in all of these situations. And there was one, I'll never forget, I was watching one of the episodes of Ghost Hunters, and they were showing like an infrared camera, and something was crawling on the floor in the corner of this old mental institution that was condemned and shut down. And the guy used the name of the Lord as a curse word. And that thing just disappeared as soon as he said the name. And later on, they're replaying the video, and he says, well, we had some weird incident happen when we saw this thing crawling around in the dark. He says an infrared cameras picked it up. He says, and then we used some religious jargon, and it disappeared. I was like, okay, like even these people that don't know the Lord, the demons understand. They tremble at his name. They tremble at who he is. They know their fate is the lake of fire. So as authority, as believers, we do have authority to cast out demons. And that's basically what you're doing, Kelly. I mean, you're not only casting them out, but the healing of the mind that has been diminished by these demonic forces, correct?
So absolutely, but it is a little more complex. I mean, the enemy has been working at this for a while. He has nearly perfected it, except for Yeshua. Yeshua is the game changer. But it's not these popcorn demons that, you know, we go out there with these big church gatherings and go. And these are just little popcorn demons coming out because they have legal rights. The will is the most powerful thing, and Yeshua will not go against the will. It was a gift he gave them. And so the enemy knows that. And so he has manipulated their will. And then he's layered these legal rights and these parts and these demons all in on top of attachment theory, trauma, and all these other things. So it is complex. But, you know, he redeems. And it took a while to get there. And so it takes a little bit to undo it. But what I'm hopeful for is he's not snapping his fingers and it's happening right now, because he's trying to teach his bride what they need to do, how they need to war. But as we learn and get strong, then it will go much faster. I mean, I already see the difference now when I get some people and I'm just like, oh, okay, this happened to you, right? Okay, that happened. And they almost don't have to tell me. Because now I'm seeing the pattern and I can go much faster now. And so I believe he's just preparing his body in the art of war, in this war, so that we can have quicker victories. But it isn't just saying, although he is all powerful, it's not just saying the name. Some will have to flee. If they don't have a legal right, they do have to flee, you know, but A lot of them have legal rights, especially when it's done purposely like this.
Does anybody else want to comment on legal rights?
Yeah.
That's such a critical thing. Go ahead, Nathan. Sorry.
I think it's critical to understand that the whole entire kingdom, the fabric of reality, is held together by covenants. You know, we hear this reference to the law of sin and death in the scriptures that's thrown out there. And to the vast majority of people, we don't understand that that is the law, the Torah, that governs the kingdom of darkness. That is the legal framework, like Kelly is describing here. We have a legal adversary, right? Hasatan is how he's like literally described, the accuser. Okay, this is the one who stands and literally brings accusations as the prosecuting attorney to have a judgment given by the judge of all the earth to execute vengeance, execute justice against the lawbreakers, those who sin. Sin is the transgression of the law, the Torah, the loving instructions of the Father. These were like the commands that were given to Adam from the very beginning. Listen, Adam, guard this land. I'm giving you dominion here. I'm giving you a literal rules of engagement, and I'm giving you a place and a dominion for how to watch over this. Shamar, we get this word in modernity that's called samurai. It means king's guardian. It's an etymological carryover of this word in Hebrew, that's shamar, which is to guard, to watch, to keep, to protect, to defend, to vanquish those that come against you. Like, we are supposed to guard and we are supposed to shema, which is to listen and obey. These are like the two foundational premises of covenant theology that we have to understand, that when we hear, we can't have faith comes from hearing, and hearing comes from the word of Elohim. But if you've got these spirits that are literally operating under the law of sin and death and the legal grounds that were given, like unto Shemyaza and Mastema and Gadriel and this other hierarchy, this pantheon of fallen spirits, principalities, powers, rulers, dominions, spiritual wickedness in high places, thrones. These are a literal chain of command, a hierarchical structure that governs the spiritual realm that we don't necessarily physically see with our carnal eyes, but is absolutely assuredly just as relevant to the governing authorities that we would look at and say, oh, it's the Council on Foreign Relations, it's the Club of Rome, it's the Black Venetian nobility. Like, we can look at physical carnal actors on the earth. I call them agents of evil that are under the influence, they're obedient to their masters, just as much as we are called to be obedient to ours. But when we walk in that sin, when we commit to that transgression, when we deepen our rebellion and we begin to sin with a high hand, we begin to sear off that conscience. We begin to cauterize the convictions that are there, the calling back towards morality, towards righteousness. And that is a deepening of what is called iniquity. And that iniquity is literally the force that so many mystics and so many occultists are using to manipulate and govern magical practices on this earth, to influence the minds of men, to practice alchemical transformative powers on the earth. That force comes from iniquity. Iniquity is first ever found in Hillel ben Shahar. That's where we get this Latin phrase Lucifer, right? It's literally translates to the son of the howling morning, the shrieking one. He is a fallen cherub, a distinct separate entity from Hasatan, which is a fallen seraphim, as he's identified in Revelation 12 as the dragon, the serpent, the devil. That one is a fallen seraph, different entity, different species is the best way to say it, a serpentine entity. Whereas these cherub, they had distinct facial features, different types of body structures, different jobs. Lucifer, or Hillel ben Shahar, it literally says during his 5 I wills, when he is making a covenant, that I will ascend to the Most High. I will put myself in power, right? There was these declarations of his covenant over mankind. And it says that iniquity was found in him. That iniquity force is what these Sumerians, what people that are practicing occult Babylonian and Egyptian sex magic are garnering from the Book of the Dead and following these rites and these rituals that have been passed down from the sons of Cain and from the priest class of Enoch the evil. They are carrying in that seething energies of Lucifer, like Helena Blavatsky, or even other carryovers like Aleister Crowley we're talking about, and Anton LaVey through Satanism, and when he's preaching this, do what thou will shall be the whole of the law. That law is do whatever you want, follow your own heart. That ideology, that covenant is what governs that kingdom. And so when Kelly's describing breaking and renouncing, that means like separating yourself, cutting off the spiritual agreements and the legal agreements that we've had with other spirits, other powers, even if we don't distinctly ever remember sitting down with a pen and paper and signing our name on a contract. When we obey, who we obey is evidence, is the fruit of our beliefs. What we think about, right? What these thoughts are become actions after our beliefs have taken root and given birth to the fruits of obedience. When we obey our flesh, when we obey and do the desires of the world, when we conform to the pattern of this world, we are transformed to be like the shapeshifters, as they're called, like the metaskizmadzotoi in Greek, like Satan and his angels, or transformers. This is the English word we work with. These are shapeshifters. And it says their apostles do the same thing. They masquerade as angels of light, as ministers of lights, people that come and say, we do these great works in your name, right? We have our churches that have been systemically infected very strategically for hundreds of years to lead the shepherds astray. And these are like reliable historical firsthand text that you can study for yourself about the etymology and the history of the American education system. They literally took captivity, the pulpits, the newspapers, and the education systems to take control of the minds and the wills of the children, to literally institute a form of government-sponsored mind control on the populace of the United States, to destroy their self-starters, the entrepreneurial mindset, their ability to read and understand and comprehend and communicate, the creative expression of innovation and invention. They wanted to eradicate that in order to try to govern about a restoration of the Anglo-American Empire, that Britain would bring America back under its dominion, its power, that Rome would once more seize the religious arm of the nations, and they would rule a governing of the nations. These are things that are plainly written in their own text, but we have a society that has been bedazzled to be stupid. We've been brainwashed to be ignorant and dumb and deaf and sheep that are going to the slaughter, rather than understanding our identity and our calling comes from a covenantal relationship with a love of the truth. The love of the truth is the thing that fundamentally should distinctly set us apart from the ways of the nation. And when we walk in that, there is power through the covenant through our Messiah and the offering that he has given us to have hope, to have determination and deliverance from that oppression.
Well said. Oh man, you hit on so many points. That's a whole show. that's
Right?
Not enough time
That's
to
the
hear.
thing with this. There's so many different tentacles to this. I mean, there's so many things that we haven't even touched on about this, about the way they're using us like batteries, using the children like batteries and sucking their energy and trying to traumatize them as much as they can so that the adrenal is utilized is the best form for their addiction, and how it creates realms. And I mean, it goes on and on. But with him, he's undoing it all, and he is redeeming.
Yeah, thank God. What would we do without the Holy Spirit directing us, and the Son of God sacrificing himself on a cross, shedding his own blood for the redemption of mankind and to get rid of this evil? You mentioned iniquity. Paul mentions the mystery of iniquity. I think it's in 2 Thessalonians. And it is interesting. That's always kind of captivated me, that there's a mystery to this, that there's something that's hard to explain or hard to understand about it. But it is the covenant that the demonic realm uses, with whether we know it or not, whether we're naive or ignorant, it doesn't matter. If we enter into contract with them, just like you said, not necessarily on a piece of paper with a pen, but just by our own sinful natures and willingly entering into, sexual sin is probably, the one that comes to mind easily, because that is the one that entraps a whole bunch of people. Soul ties and all these other things that happen when two become one. The Bible said a man and a woman shall become one flesh. But when you're sleeping around and you're promiscuous and you're having sex with multiple partners, you're sleeping with everybody they've slept with. And all that demonic baggage comes with it. And so the mystery of iniquity to me has always been this thing of, it's an ongoing thing that will meet its end eventually, right? There's going to be an end to iniquity. when Christ comes back and puts an end to it, and the lake of fire is their end. But until then, we have to, I don't want to say, we don't play their game. We have to know their game, how they trap us, the snares that are set by these satanic forces. I don't know. That mystery of iniquity, that's another thing I don't really hear many pastors talking about. And that's something that should be talked about.
Yeah, there's so much that's not talked about that really needs to be. And we don't understand everything in the spirit realm. But the more I do this, the more I think there's just a whole lot to it that we don't have to know it all, but we need to be obedient. And I believe when I do this work and other people do this work, that it is setting others free without even being there, because they're tied in through ley lines and grids and stuff like that and in the other realms. And when you start severing that stuff, I believe it's a ripple effect. And so, we don't know that, we don't get that, but I believe that Yeshua does. He knows exactly what he's doing. And if you look at the Bible and you see Gideon's army, there was only a few needed. So sometimes I get a little discouraged because I'm like, why can't anybody rise up with, with me? And I think about in the Bible where he's like, there's, 144 that you don't even know about, and how he literally sent a bunch of Gideon's army back because he only wanted a few so he could show up and show out and show his glory, and he could get the praise and the glory for it. And so there's a lot that we can be encouraged by, that we don't know everything. We don't have to know everything. We just have to have a huge trust and obedience in him.
Right. Nathan, you've got something that you're about to read us. I can just
Too bad, man.
feel
I love
it.
books. I love books here. I don't have, I'm in the process of, I've been living out of totes for a long time here, but I got one of them. And this is someone who is very instrumental in my life at helping to give me an understanding that there are righteous, brave warriors still out there fighting for truth. And this man's name was Russ Dizdar. And this is his book, which is called Expelling Darkness, Engaging Non-Human Entities Now and in the End of Days. Now, he also wrote his first bigger published book was called The Black Awakening and the Rise of Satanic Super Soldiers. Absolutely critical, meaty textbooks, and to me, fundamental battle equipments. Like when you go into the military, they give you this gigantic book when you begin to start out on everything you need to understand about the fundamentals of becoming a soldier and no longer being the civilian you once were. And you were to drill that into your mind and understanding. We got this scriptures, this living sword, that's literally active, living, and is the discerner of the thoughts, the intentions of the hearts of man. Well, listen, there's addendums that people have written over time and millennia to help equip people with an understanding so they can be more effective at literally dismantling the kingdom of darkness. And I know some of you that have been listening to this, you're freaked out of your stinking minds. This scares the heck out of you, and you don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole, and you have all of this other terrible fear that's boiling up in you because you don't understand really what's going on. And for you to comprehend and hold in your mind that this could be reality, that this is actually what the world looks like and how it functions, is such a hard paradigm shift for you that you would rather to kind of run back into the comfortable sands of ignorance that we've been in for a long time. But understand, this is like the reality of what the scriptures plainly has given us for how the world works. Like, this is what Ezekiel saw in chapters 8 and 9, when the Father literally ripped open a door into the temple itself, like the Holy of Holies place, the special place that's supposed to be all about the kingdom of Yah. And then he's all like, Ezekiel, I'm going to show you the abominations are in the house. And let me tell you, my family were like overt Christians. Like, they knew all the language. Like, my brother-in-laws, like, listen, they've got master's degrees in seminaries for apologetics. And like, these guys can go toe to toe with 9 out of 10 you Christians. Meanwhile, they're selectively adopting children out of the foster care system that are sexually abused and pregnant at 12 years old, so they can get that easy, traumatized, sexually abused, mind-controlled child into the family and start literally pumping them through the family business. Like, these are unbelievable workers of Satan in so many ways, and they are strategically sown inside the church. It's because it's the best camouflage, because that's where the most ignorant and beguiled and foolish people are. And I don't say that to offend you unnecessarily. I say that because the vast majority of Christians I've ever interacted with are some of those most prideful people, because they don't know the word for themselves. They've been going and getting supplemental theology in the form of snippet psychology on Sundays, thinking they have an understanding of the Bible, when they themselves are woefully ignorant of what it means to follow him from Genesis to Revelation. Have you personally read the Bible from Genesis to Revelation? If you haven't, I encourage you, before you go sit there and say, I'm a follower of that book, read the book for yourself and understand that's for you. And like when I started seeing, after coming out of the military and studying in the fields of psychology, I went to a secular university, and I began to see what the best psychology departments in the world had to offer in the forms of counseling and restoration and all the rest. And I saw the emptiness of a lot of it. But then when I went to the church side of the equation, I began to see a lack of understanding from them. It wasn't until I bumped into people like Russ Dizdar and Dr. Michael Lake and Mary Lou and some of these people that were bold, fearless, and ferociously equipped with understanding to engage the entities that were traumatizing people, that were the generational cursed spirits, the familial spirits, the generational mighty ones over families like my own. When I saw them walking with boldness and fearlessness and exposing the wicked works of darkness and not having anything to do with them, oh my gosh, I finally had courage. I finally borrowed some of those men's warrior spirit, their balls to get in the fight. You know what I'm saying? Like, I needed to see men being men. Like I understand, ladies.
Nathan,
I appreciate you, ladies. Yeah.
It's testicular fortitude. This is a Christian show.
You betcha, bro. Yes. Yes. Cojones. I come from the South, and we called it cojones. Like chutzpah. This is what I needed to see. And that's what the men had been chemically castrated, and we'd been ripped away from our families and shoved into institutional forms of slavery, indentured servitudes to debt in this financial money magic system. And we've been separated from our children by design. But man, there's some of them that were rising up. And he has, in this book, he's got a chapter, I believe it's Shatter Worldwide is the website you guys can go to if you're interested in Russ Dizdar's book. The Black Awakening has been out of print for years since he died a couple years ago, was killed off, and it's been very hard to get. But his daughter Charity has been working very diligently to finally get that book back into print. So, but this is chapter 9. I'm just going to read from you because these are some testimonies of a guy who was on the front lines of this battle for a long time. This is Close the Doors. After the prayers of renouncing of drugs, I took all the drugs he had left and burned them, Russ Dizdar. The boy had a demon come into his room. The sister had a demonized amulet on and didn't know it. They wondered what the demon had to come in. She gave up the demonized object, and no more demons came in. The name of the Lord Jesus was magnified. Many who believed came and confessing, telling their deeds. Many who practiced magic brought their books together and burned them before everyone. They calculated their value, which equaled 50,000 drachmas. So the word of the Lord powerfully grew and spread. Every door ever given to demons or Satan must be shut. Continue on page 215. The Satanist or ritually abused person, they brought bags of stuff. We went to a park area and they told me all about the items. There were so many, so much demonic stuff that was used in dark rituals. One item was a wooden box. It had a naked man inside with his arms tied behind his back, a pentagram on his chest, and little plastic knives, cloth, and an altar. I asked them what it was. It was the play toys they were given to practice human sacrifice. We burned it all and the flames glowed green. The king commanded Hilkiah, the high priest, the priests of the second order, and the keepers of the threshold to bring out of the temple of Yahuwah all the implements that were made for Baal, for Asherah, and for all the host of heaven. Then he burned them outside Jerusalem in the fields of Kidron and carried their ashes to Bethel. Then he removed the idolatrous priests whom the kings of Judah had ordained to burn incense on the high places at the cities of Judah and around Jerusalem, those also who burned incense to Baal, to the sun, to the moon, to the constellation, and to all the hosts of heaven. He brought out out the Asherah from the house of Yahuwah to the outside of Jerusalem to the Kidron Valley. Then he burned it at the Kidron Valley, crushed it to dust, and threw its dust upon the graves of the people. He tore down the houses of the male cult prostitutes that were in the house of Yahuwah, where the women were weaving hangings for the Asherah. 2 Kings 23. This is the reality of the history of the people of the chosen people of the Most High. And if we remain ignorant, listen, we are commanded to be not ignorant of the schemes of the devil. That is a command for you, any one of you that wants to follow and say that Jesus is your master, that you believe in him and want to walk in his ways. Listen, he says his people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge and the ignorance that's been most effective to keep the believers in the trenches is ignorance of the schemes of the devil. They're ignorant of them, and because of that, it facilitates a kingdom of conspiracy that allows them to predate upon them and to use them like battery banks, as Kelly was saying earlier.
Well, Sylvia and I love Russ Dizdar and his ministry and what he did, and so many great people have come out of his ministry just understanding how to fight this evil that we're up against. Sylvia, who was the guest we just had on recently? That was
Landon,
that's right. Yep.
Landon,
Yep.
which I met last year at the conference, and then now he's introduced me to Luke, who used to work with Russ Dizdar, and they are helping us with a few cases because people, like you said, people don't understand how this works, right? The cases that we have are with, there's a judge and a social worker and a therapist, like they're all in places in order to take the child, and they make the parents sound crazy when they talk about it and when they talk about the abuse that their kid is going through. So this is what's been so frustrating for me, because we know that these people are in power and that they are performing these rituals and that children are being harmed daily. But when do we get to where we are able to take these people down? Like there's nobody above them. And this is where we have, Russ Dizdar's teaching has come in handy, because it is the only thing that works, because it is a spiritual battle. It's not physical. But I'm ready for the physical, where we can start arresting these people. Like I know who they are. So
Yeah.
So when is that gonna happen, where we can start saying, all right, you are no longer in power?
It's challenging because they have infiltrated all the way up in every arena and every mountain. So the Lord, that's where you just have to trust in him. And he has taken them out, here and there. And eventually, whenever the time is right, he'll make his big move. But until then, we just keep doing what we can do. And we do see victory as we do it. But that's where I think that he's preparing his body for whatever he's about to do. Because if we were totally ignorant, scripture says that men's hearts will fail them for what's coming. Well, those who have responded to his call and have been exposed to a lot of this firsthand, it's not going to be that surprising to us. I mean, sometimes, I could think back when I remember one time I almost did run. But, when you just stand, scripture again says, just stand. I can literally remember one coming at me and I just said, I'm not going to run. I'm just going to stand. And I did take my salt water and squeeze it at them, but they literally, fell down. But if I didn't have those experiences, I'm sure my heart would fail me for what is coming when the showdown comes. So I think it's a matter of we do what we can now and be obedient. And we see the victories, but we're also being prepared for the big victory.
Yeah.
I think discernment is the key in the times we live in. It's always actually the key, but especially the day and age we live in, there is so much deception right now. I've had a few people say, well, where should I go to church? And I hate to even tell them to go to a church. Like get in the word, read the word. If you need some help, we can do some Bible studies or things like that. But it's so scary to just put them in somebody else's care if they're new to the faith, because we know a lot of people get discouraged.
Yeah.
Gosh, I know when I came to faith, I was following a lot of false teaching. I mean, a ton, but thank God he had me in his word. So I was reading the word, and I would go to different churches and different organizations and conferences and all these things. And I was getting fed all kinds of garbage. The name it and claim it, blab it and grab it, spit it and get it, you name it. It was all part of the baggage that I had to break free from. And I thought, God was this cosmic jackpot slot machine or something that you just pull his arm and, and he makes you rich and all these things. It was just garbage. And when I came out, and including eschatology, I was taught all kinds of false eschatology. And when you come out of that and you just read his word and let him speak to you through his spirit, it's amazing what you can break free from. But that discernment that he gives each one of us, we have to tap into that discernment. We don't just get to kind of casually lay back and say, oh, I got discernment and now my spiritual antenna's up. No, you have to be in the word. You have to know what it says. Just like you said, Nathan, because if you're not reading that book, man, you are setting yourself up for disaster. And especially the days we're entering into, they are dark days where, let's face it, they come as angels of light. Just like you said, they're transformers. If you don't know, I don't know if you guys know who Doreen Virtue is. She was the number one New Age guru in the world. She had the largest website. She sold the most books, all these things. And about 9 or 10 years ago, she came to Christ. And now she just dispels everything she ever did. She says, please burn it if you have any of my garbage, and she's actually coming on this Monday. I'm having her on my show Monday. She's an amazing woman. And just, she's always preaching about discernment and how because the New Age has infiltrated the church. And when we say New Age, it's actually old. This isn't new stuff. This goes back millennia. But I think that discernment is lacking in so many Christians' lives. And I feel like when I started podcasting, that was something that I felt like the Lord was telling me, like, start telling my people, know what they believe, why they believe it, and how to defend the faith. And I don't know. There's days I get so discouraged because I just feel like the church is asleep at the wheel or something. It's frustrating. Nathan, sorry, Kelly, let me ask one more thing real quick. Nathan, was Dr. Michael Lake's book, was it the Shinar Directive? Is that, or yeah,
yes,
that was,
absolutely.
Yes, that was a great book.
And then he's got two more after that, which is the Sharith Imperative and the Kingdom Priesthood.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Excellent. Yeah,
excellent.
Very good. Sorry, Kelly, go ahead.
I was going to say, in their defense, it is, he is the great deceiver, right? If possible, even the elect would be deceived. So in my opinion, what I've learned and what I see is the Lord has given us a lot of gifts and a lot of tools, and the enemy has taken them and twisted them. And so it's where we're like afraid of it now. Oh, that's New Age. Well, when the reality is that's part of our gifting, and that's part of our avenue for healing and things of that sort. So you really have to take it just, like with a fine-tooth comb and separate out the deception and get to the pure, because a lot of people are just running from all of it when the answer for some of the things are in there. Does that make sense? Do you see what I'm saying with that? He's taken our gifts and our reality and twisted it where we have become afraid of some of the things that are actually an answer for our healing and for our living a life of abundance. So it gets complicated, and I've certainly been deceived so many times. And I try to take what I learned from that last deception and implement it. But he's pretty complex, and he's waged a war, that's for sure.
If we're in his care, and we're sold out to him, we're going to make mistakes. We're definitely going to make mistakes. We're human beings. I've followed so many false teachings and false prophets and all these things in my past. But I always said, you know what? You don't beat yourself up on it. You go back to the Lord and say, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. He knew you were going to make the mistake. But then if our heart's in it, if our whole heart is in, he's going to show you truth. That's what I have found time and time again. He lets you go on a path so that you could learn something from it and move on. There's no rear view mirrors.
I'd love to
Absolutely.
just read that section that you had mentioned earlier about the mystery of iniquity, right? This is in Second Thessalonians chapter 2. And it says, for the secret of lawlessness or mystery of iniquity is already at work, only until he who now restrains comes out of the midst. And then the lawless one shall be revealed, whom the master shall consume with the spirit of his mouth and bring to nothing with the manifestation of his coming. The coming of the lawless one is according to the workings of Satan, with all power and signs and wonders of falsehood, and with all deceit of unrighteousness in those perishings, because they did not receive the love of the truth in order for them to be saved. And for this reason, Elohim sends them a working of delusion for them to believe the falsehood, in order that all should be judged who did not believe the truth, but have delighted in unrighteousness. But we ought to give thanks always to Elohim, always for you, brothers, beloved of the Master, because Elohim from the beginning chose you to be saved in set apartness of spirit and belief in the truth, unto which he called you by our good news, for the obtaining of the esteem of our Master Yeshua Messiah. So then, brothers, stand fast and hold the traditions which you were taught, whether by word or by our letter. And our Master Yeshua Messiah himself, and the Elohim and Father, who has loved us and given us everlasting encouragement and good expectation through favor, encourage your hearts and establish you in every good work and word. Fundamentally, this is the revelation of much of the kingdom of the beast. We are finally in a time where the apocalypse, the revealing of the kingdom of darkness is taking place, and it is really being managed and allowed and facilitated by those who carry forth a false light. So many believers, so many people are being beguiled to believe the exposure and the destruction of the normal society that we've known, and its revelation that it is filled with this disgusting underbelly, is to also be manipulated and to turn those people towards a false light, a false gospel, a doctrine of demons, in order for them to inherit. There's a reason Lucifer Publishing House and the massive infiltration, like in Helena Blavatsky, one of the best books, if those of you that have not read, two books here real quick. I have an entire recommended reading section on my website, snatchedfromtheflames.com. We talk about regenerative agriculture, homeschooling, ancient lost history, and then all kinds of, conspiracy stuff. This is Genesis 6 Conspiracy by Gary Wayne, one of the better. He just came out with another one, which I have not read over here, which is a great, incredible in-depth analysis of like why these people believe what they believe and what is the history of their doctrines, their bloodlines, their heraldry, and why is it that the governing rulers, right, the New World Order, why do they do what they do? Well, he outlines a lot of it, but another gentleman who has put forth a tremendous amount of work is a guy named Johnny Cerrucci. This is his book, which is first one that he put out, which is called The Illuminati Unmasked. And this is everything you need to know about the New World Order and how we will beat it. But like these people have been practicing this intentional infiltration for a long time. And my contention is that releasing of these watchers, the Grigori, that were held in chains of darkness for these many generations, came forth, many of them in the 19th century. And we saw this unleashing of these dark agendas, these brilliant strategies to deceive and beguile and to take captivity the entirety of the nations of the world and unite them under a single monarchy, under a globalist powerful hand. Helena Blavatsky is one of those people who was very influential at channeling that occult energy to put forth their own gospel, their own vision, their own edict for the ages. And paramount was the intentional infiltration to the church, through majority, through their leadership, through their seminaries, through the pastors that govern them and influence them. These are her own words, okay? This is on page 559 of Illuminati Unmasks. And it says in here, let me go back one second. This is, sorry, I'll jump forward on one page.
It looks like a quick read. What is that, about 5,000 pages in that book? That thing is huge.
It's just easy reading, bro.
Do they have
we
an
gotta
audio
get busy.
book?
We got a lot of books. I'll be your audio book, man. I put forward the entire
perfect.
audio of the scriptures to try to help people like that. You know, Johnny does a great job at that. But yeah, get busy reading, bro. Right? You know what I'm saying? Audiobooks changed my life forever. This is on page 560, and it says, although Blavatsky was an apologist for the darkest of pagan ritualism, she was unafraid to call out false Christians for what they were, and was also surprisingly frank about the rivals like the Jesuits. And I quote, secret Christian societies all have an immediate connection. They are of Kabbalistic parentage and have once held to the secret wisdom religion, recognizing as the one supreme, the mystery God of the ineffable name. They are more or less connected with magic, practically as well as theoretically. To term them Christians is wholly unwarranted. They neither believe in Jesus as Christ, nor accept his atonement, nor adhere to his church, nor revere its holy scriptures. Neither do they worship Jehovah, the God of the Jews and Christians, a circumstance which, of course, proves that their founder, John the Baptist, did not worship him either. She's bringing to revelation how these people have been infiltrating these believers. Listen, the enemy sows his most dangerous bombs inside the houses of his enemies. He doesn't waste a bullet on a troop who is sitting down entrenched behind their comfortable lines of convenient Christianity. He doesn't care about them. He's got them right where he wants them. People have this idea that there's three kingdoms: the kingdom of light, the kingdom of darkness, and the kingdom of the gray. That's that lukewarm middle distance that a lot of people are going to be spit out of the mouth of the Messiah. He's going to say, get away from me, I never knew you, you workers of iniquity, lawlessness, Torahlessness. You didn't obey him. You didn't walk in his ways. You carried about a power in you that was from a different kingdom. It was not from him. And I think you've done a great job, Gino, of being transparent about being beguiled by very capable practitioners of a false gospel. And we got to be on guard to know the word ourselves so that we can give an answer to everyone who asks us to give a reason for the hope that we have.
Yes. You said that quote was from Blavatsky?
Yes.
That, isn't it interesting that it came not from somebody in the church, it came from a known mystic, one of the most famous mystics of all time. Like, it's just, sometimes you got to listen to your enemy.
Oh yeah.
Don't take it to heart.
She's trying to tell you they're plans of the devil, you know? Understand where it's coming from.
Unbelievable.
A lot of them, I think, are following that fake Jesus that I talked about before. They don't know any better because they don't read the scriptures themselves, so they don't know the real one. Or they might because their heart is right and he is wooing them and he'll show them. But as an institution, I think that's what's happening to a lot of them.
Yeah, I believe that. Doreen Virtue exposes that quite a bit on her channel, how the New Age infiltration is in every, in so many churches right now. And it is very deceptive because they'll mention Jesus. And a lot of people, including myself, I remember I would go to concerts when I was younger. And if the artist said, God bless you, I said, wow, this guy believes in God. He believes in the Almighty. You know, like I was just so naive. You know, back then. I mean, obviously, as you grow in your faith and you realize, okay, they're not worshiping the same God. They're not calling on the same God I am. But that New Age teaching is in there. And when they say that you know, Christ and Jesus and he was a great prophet, they use all these, you know, fuzzy words that really don't mean anything. They don't glorify the Lord. That instantly the antenna should go up. And that Christ consciousness and all that stuff, that garbage, I don't know. It's so ingrained in modern day teachings. Like, I don't even know if the pastors know what they're preaching half the time, because I think they're getting like AI generated sermons or something. It's bizarre.
There is a group, I can't think of the name right now. There is a certain name, but I don't know. It's a group where it's almost like an association where, okay, this week we're all doing this teaching, and here it is, it's being sent to you. There's some reports that came out about that there's a group, like basically association, where they just, they send out teachings. And that's why, if you've ever, there was a time in my life that I would watch a lot of pastors on TV, and they all had a similar message. And I was like, is the Lord talking to me? He must really be talking to me, because he keeps saying the same thing on every channel.
They had the same
There was an
script.
author. There was an author that just came out with a book that's revealing all these fake pastors, and that very thing you're talking about, where they have like a kind of like an ad. Remember Mad Libs used to open the book and you would fill in the little verb or an adjective? They have scripted sermons for pastors now. They can get them online, and they pay like a membership fee or something. And they go ahead and just, it's this generic story about whatever, and then they just put their name and other people's names, plug and play, and that becomes this, well-versed sermon that the church listens to. It's, wow, that was such an amazing message. And it's just some garbage that has hardly any of the word involved in it, hardly any teaching, hardly anything that's going to be applicable to your life and how to live and walk this thing out called faith. And especially what you guys are dealing with, fighting against the enemy and exposing darkness. None of that's there. I mean, the enemy's really, I hate giving the enemy credit, but I will give him credit on this. He's very intelligent. If we think we can go up against his ways and we're smarter than the enemy, no. But with God, all things are possible, and with His leading. But if you think you're going to go toe to toe with the enemy, good luck with that. That's going nowhere. He's been around a long time, and just like you said, he knows your family backward and forward. It's not this thing of where we just get to kind of listen to a nice fuzzy sermon and then expect to win that week. You've got to go deep. I mean, those books you're reading, Nathan, I know a lot of Russ's material. I used to watch tons of his videos and things like that. I probably need to brush up a little bit on some of that stuff. But teachers like that, they were like ostracized. Like, they were like, oh gosh, you guys believe that, and all that stuff from antiquity? Like, are you kidding me? The scripture is the same. Like Jesus said, he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. He is the word. That word is living and active and sharper than any two-edged sword. And it still applies today. All that stuff that's going on still applies. It didn't change. It might have transformed, metamorphosized, but it's still the same enemy. And we have to be, man, I don't know. We are not ready for a lot of this stuff. You said that the fear of, things coming upon the earth will terrify people. There you go, Nate. Will terrify people. If you're not ready, it is scary stuff, I will admit. But when you have Him as your Lord and Savior and He's at the center of your life, there's no more fear.
I mean, there is nothing special about me at all. I'm a 6-year-old mother and wife. I mean, if I can do it, anyone can. It's just a matter of being willing and saying yes and laying down your life for Him, just like He laid down His life for us. I mean, there's nothing everybody can do it. You just have to be willing to. And then you do trample on them. Literally, we trample on them. They have no power once you cut that legal right. Once whoever the survivor is or whoever you're working with, once they repent and cut that legal right and choose Yeshua, I mean, they gotta go. Now, you do have a lot of layers and a lot of tangles and all that, but there is victory, and there's nothing they can do. They have to be obedient to it once you deal with that stuff.
I want to say that there was very effective little in the world, grand scheme of the world, people who came into my life when I was hopelessly lost and completely given over to this learned helplessness. And I had no idea if there was anybody out there who actually had the authority of the Most High. And you know what? There's a section in my book which talks about Danny and the Dodge Viper and a girl named Suze, which was a teenage girl, a young teenage girl that had that kind of boldness that Kelly's describing right now. That's the preeminent, the first real evidence and fruit of the Holy Spirit, the power, the dynamite. The word is dynamos. It's literally where we get this word dynamite, tetronitroglycerin. It's nitroglycerin mixed with diatomaceous earth, creates an unbelievably effective destructive weapon and very effective tool for cracking rocks, for blowing people apart, right? That is dynamite. That's what the Holy Spirit is described as. That's the Greek word they chose, dunamis power. That power coming upon people, creatures, little mankind, that makes us be able to walk in the authority and be able to do mighty deeds and exploits. Like in the Old Testament, in the scriptures, it talks about the Gibborim. That's the Hebrew word for mighty men of valor, courageous warriors, ferocious special operations teams. People like David's mighty men, Benaiah, who climbed into a pit with a lion on a snowy day, who wrestled the staff out of it. He literally killed a giant with his own weapon, like savage warriors, right? Then there's these like little people, seemingly Jael, woman, housewife, keeping the tent, keeping an eye on things in the book of Judges. She's butchering Sisera with a tent peg through his temple. Savage tradecraft, awesome warrior, right? These are like, there's these stories peppered along the pages of our scriptures as testimonies to embolden our faith, to understand why was Deborah gifted with such boldness and faith to be able to command armies, to command kings, to counsel with them, to prophesy boldly the truth. Like, why did Rahab have the confidence to know that the God of Israel, Yahuwah Elohim, was the God of all the nations? She's like, everybody knows what he did with signs and wonders to bring the people out. He wiped out the most powerful military force in the world with an old dude and a stick. Like, that's pretty savage. That's pretty savage. That's pretty memorable, And that was just him warming up. He's like, yeah, fire by day, fire by night, cloud by day. Like, he created air conditioning and a climate-controlled environment to make the desert bloom with grasses for all of their sheep and their livestock. Like, we don't think about the people wandering in the wilderness having a beautiful, grasses, lush paradise to walk in. But when you provide clouds in the desert, you provide humidity through the heat, you provide this incredible, majestic, climate-controlled area for them to move with their animals and their young and their livestock, where manna was manifesting on the ground every single day without fail, even while they were carrying the temple of Moloch and the star of Remphan and being rebels and worthless in his sight. He still took care of their needs. He still met his words. He is like, because of the sake of the covenant I had with Abraham and your fathers, I'm still going to bring this word to come to pass. And you know what? I needed people that highlighted those kinds of stories on the stage and in the pulpit. But you know what? I only generally found them in the gutters. I found them amongst the pimps and the prostitutes. I found them scattered in with the losers and the remnant, the leftovers. And this little 13-year-old girl named Suze, when I manifested demons on a school bus, she wasn't scared of me. She just stood there and she smiled at me with eyes that were supernaturally filled with love. Whereas everybody else would be scared and run because there's this creepy multiple voice demonic language coming out of my mouth, a guttural screaming. She didn't care at all. She understood her authority. She's someone who had read beyond John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. Great verse. Fundamentally important to help people understand the gospel. But if you keep reading further, it's far more scary of a story. I'm going to read that because dadgummit, everyone should be reading it and understanding it. This is John 3:16, carries on to verse 17. For Elohim did not send his son into the world to judge the world, but that the world through him might be saved. He who believes in him is not judged, but he who does not believe is judged already, because he has not believed in the name of the only brought forth Son of Elohim. And this is the judgment, that the light has come into the world, and men loved the darkness rather than the light, for their works were wicked. For everyone who is practicing evil matters hates the light and does not come to the light, lest his works should be exposed. But the one doing the truth comes to the light, so that his works are clearly seen, that they have been wrought in Elohim. That word, that's fierce. That's scary. That's like this. This is a two-edged sword. You know what I'm saying? This is a very effective tool that's designed for war. This is a Xiphos, okay? Like this is the short sword that is highly effective at piercing specifically to find nerve clusters, to find carotid arteries, to dismantle and dismember and maim your enemies, to cut their faces off. That's what this tool was made for. You know, comes from Windlass Cutlery. You can get this for like $70. You know, you can get this for like $70. You can do a lot of great harm and evil and violence with this. You can also use it to cut the limbs off of trees and prune your bushes and butcher meat and put food on the table. You can use these two edges to do all kinds of things, just like you can use this word and this scripture to do all kinds of things. But you know what? This book is set apart and unique to all the other books in the world in that it really is alive. It really is living. It really is active. It should create in us a fervent desire to do something, to get up, get going, and get in the game. You know, that should be those fruits that are manifesting in people's lives. And if you don't have that, please listen. You can call upon the one who made you, formed you in the mother's womb, and fashioned you with a purpose, and he will give you that zealousness like his children have had before to lay down their lives for their friends, to lay down in the courts of public opinion and stand with convictions and call the nations to a very dangerous word, which is called repentance. Repentance, to come back to him, to seek forgiveness, to literally petition the king of all the earth, the judge of all the earth, to have mercy on them, but also to turn and then go and seek to set captives free, to lay hands on the sick, to raise the dead, to cast out demons, to heal. These were the things that are supposed to be evidence of our beliefs. But if we don't have a working understanding of what to do with this, we will have no idea how to wield anything like this effectively unless we got good shepherds and good discipliners, teachers who come alongside us and show us, let me show you how to use that tool so you don't cut your own face off with it, and you can use it precisely to protect, provide, and defend those that you love.
I have a feeling our cessationist friends might disagree a little bit. Sorry, I had to say that. Oh man, that was well said, man. You know, I think it's your website, Kelly. Every time I go to your website, the music starts playing. So I apologize
Oh, really?
to the audience for that. Yeah.
And
there's a way that I can shut the sound off on my end, but I don't know how to do that. So I'm sorry. It's happened like 4 times.
All good.
Yeah.
Oh,
gosh, that was so good, Nathan. Yeah. Nathan, you have such a way. I noticed when I was watching your channel today, I wish I would have known about your channel a long time ago, but I will definitely be watching. You have such a unique gift of, it's teaching, but it's obviously passionate. It's from the heart, and I know it's spirit led. Like you can always tell through, that's that discernment, I guess we were talking about earlier, when someone's really preaching what they live. Right? Like I don't know you personally, but I know you live it. And I can just tell, and I appreciate it. Same thing with Kelly and Sylvia and all the people that I work with are like that. We all have this heart that is turned towards him, and it's him first and everything else is second. And if we stay on that road, stay in our lane and follow him with our whole heart, we're going to win. Like we're going to defeat the enemy. I mean, we know ultimately he comes back and defeats him, but as his bride, he's asked us to engage in the fight with him. I mean, he could have done it alone. Of course he could have, but for some reason he wanted his creation to be part of it and witness this great victory that's coming. Do you guys, with all the SRA stuff and the abuse and just the cultish type behaviors and all of this stuff, are there days when you wake up and you're like, man, that mountain's really big, but I'm going to keep pushing on. I'm going to keep fighting. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, and I know Sylvia feels the same way, but I just feel like we're going to have some really good wins in the coming days. Like doors are going to start opening for us. And those miracles that Nathan was just talking about, we're going to start seeing miracles. We're going to start seeing his hand moving mightily in these last days. Do you guys feel that?
Absolutely. I mean, I already see it every day. And I think every year, if I look back, there's an increase. There's more people waking up, more people coming together in unity, more survivors feeling more comfortable to come out and speak. There's definitely momentum. And so I'm just looking forward to how it continues to increase until that time when he's like, okay, now's the big move. So it's exciting times, and yeah, it's a big mountain, but I think if we just do what his word says to do, then he prepares us and we have our armor on and he makes a way. But he does call us to, rest, Shabbat, make sure we do self-care, and these are some things that are really important for the people that are on the front lines, is because the need's so great for people. It's to be able to learn to say no in terms of Friday, I'm taking off. And no, I know you need, but you're going to survive, and just kind of make that space for yourself and make sure that you're staying filled up, that you're spending time with him, that you're doing some of the things you love, and just stay healthy. I have a teaching on my website called Living a Sealed Up Life, which I believe came from him. And I think that's really important too. And I think when we live that sealed up life, it helps us to be stronger as well and be able to withstand the storm. Because honestly, with some of the stuff we're talking about, some of the biggest storm is from the other church, the people in the church and the body that don't understand this stuff. And then all of a sudden you're a witch, or you're doing this, or you're doing that. And I have to laugh. Like, one minute I'm a witch and the next minute I'm Moses. I'm like, thank goodness that the Lord taught me how not to be a people pleaser, because I wouldn't know what I was if I listened to everybody. So
you could definitely not be a people pleaser when you're serving him.
right,
and it's hard
exactly.
because let's face it, we all want to be liked. Of course we do.
Yeah.
But I get it. Like, when you're operating in those gifts and in your calling, you will be called a heretic. You will be called a witch, a sorcerer, and all those things. But you know what? Like I said, if your heart's following him, who cares what they're saying? At the end of the day, I mean, I think it's going to be an interesting gathering when we're all together, right? We're in the kingdom with the Lord, and I wonder if he's going to allow us to, like, just look back and laugh at each other. Like, remember when you were talking about so-and-so like this, and you thought they weren't doing my will? Like, I think it's that old cliche. We try to put them in a box. And it's so true. Like God is infinite. He's eternal. His knowledge is instantaneous. There's no thinking or, debating within himself. Like, it's perfect all the time. And we think, I don't know, we as Christians, we can cut each other so deep instead of just saying, you know what, maybe you're onto something. Let me listen instead of talking. That's our problem. I mean, that used to be a big problem for me. I would just want to argue everything instead of just listening to the person and actually saying, gosh, you might have a point, or let me look into that, instead of just rushing to a quick judgment and throwing them under the bus.
Yeah. Well, a lot of, I think purposefully, they've taken away our ability to think for ourselves, to use our mind and have critical thinking and weigh the different perspectives and come up with, what you think is right when you look at word and you look at, just all the different perspectives and listen to the Holy Spirit. It's like it's been taken away from so many people, and they just go by whatever somebody says. And that's sad.
Very much so. Well, guys, we're at the 2-hour mark here. That was so fun. We got to do this again, man. That was really. I'd love to just go deeper into, like, just one or two topics that we covered, because it was a vast array of things. Kelly, I'm scared to open your website. It might. It might start doing something. Here's Nathan's website, snatchedfromtheflames.com. Check that out. Nathan, is the best place to buy your book, I'm assuming, on your website? I see.
You bet. You can click that book tab. We got an audio book. We got an ebook. You guys, it's name your own price. You can read online the whole entire book there for free if you'd like. I also have the link there to Amazon. You guys can get it direct on Amazon or through Amazon right there. Like I said earlier, I put out the entire audio scriptures, a dramatized audio reading of the scriptures with ISR translation. To me, that's far more important than any of the words that I had to say is what the words that he had to say. But the resources tab, there's something super savage right there with the prayer resources, which do come from Mary Lou Lake and Dr. Michael Lake. The prayer resources were some of the most helpful and beneficial things that ever came into my life to help me to deal with the occult that was coming after our family and all of the just unbelievable witchcraft that was taking place in our lives, as well as for healing, for the trauma and the experiences of what I'd gone through. And the reading resources that are on there as well is phenomenal. You guys can have a great time. I just desperately want people to have an absolute love for learning and understanding it and imparting to each other, man, the wisdom that's been prepared for long ago. But the best place to find most of my content, though, is on YouTube right there. That's a great multi-hour documentary for those of you guys want to watch through the Confessionals podcast there. If you guys want to see more of my story or hear more of my story at depth, that interview right there, Bound by Death and Fighting for Life, is a great place to start. But we got playlists of all kinds of stuff: natural living, biohacking, I know, eating natural foods and raising your own animals, all kinds of stuff. We have been on a wide journey of this for about 8 years, and we got about 700 videos that are on there for you guys. So have a feast.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. And look forward to meeting you at the conference. That's going to be amazing. I'm so excited about this. I wanted to go last year when I found out, but it was obviously too late. But I want to be fed. And it's such a unique thing you're doing, Kelly, with this. Like, it's an uncomfortable topic. Let's face it. Like, not many people really want to talk about this in the church, let alone in any conversation. I know in my own family, when I bring up this stuff, they're just like, kind of like glassy eyed and kind of putting their fingers in their ears, like,
Right.
But it's important. I mean, children are important. People are
Absolutely.
important to God, and these people are traumatized by this stuff, and they need help. And I just think
Yeah.
it's amazing what you're doing, and I commend you for what you do, and hosting a conference like this to bring light to the subject, but also knowledge and just the tools of the trade to put in our bag, so that maybe, look, let's face it, I think all of us know people that are traumatized. Even our own selves. I mean, I know I've been traumatized by things, maybe not to the extent of some of these poor individuals that have gone through the horrendous things they've gone through, but we need to be able to be on guard and help people when they come to us and point them in the right direction. And I think your ministry, Warrior Bride Ministries, is a great start to send somebody to get healed.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think it's going to be great. It's been a lot of fun. It's evolved really well over the years. It's an interesting combo of teaching of all different aspects, because like you said, there's so many fingers to this that you can spend a whole conference on just one topic. So we've got a variety of people trying to look at it from a micro standpoint as well as a macro standpoint and try to see how it all comes together. And I think it's just a journey, but also with that, we can have a little bit of fun too. You know, we can do some self-care. We can have fellowship. We can get to know each other more. We can learn to trust one another. We can break bread together and pray together. And so, you know, I believe the Lord's in it. And so I know it's going to be good.
It's going to be great, not good.
There you go. Okay.
It's going to be
Great.
Amazing. I just can't wait. I'm so excited. And our good friend Joyful June in the chat. I can't wait to meet you, Joyful June. She lives in Georgia. I'm not sure. I think she's in the Atlanta area. So how far is
great.
Woodstock from Atlanta?
It's just a suburb. It's, you know, depending
Okay.
on what point of Atlanta you're talking about, but it's up the road 20 minutes or something.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting her. I've known Joyful June is her tagline here on Foxhole, but she has her own show. She's a Christian. Looking forward to meeting her. Looking forward to meeting Sylvia and everybody at the conference. We're going to have a great time. That's going to be awesome if I can interview a few of you kind of behind the scenes just on my phone. I'll upload them later and edit it. Obviously, we can't go live there, but that will be really fun too. And I'm looking forward to doing face-to-face interviews and just conversations with other believers that are following their gifts and talents that God has equipped them with for these last days. It's just amazing. Nathan, man, I think I would you be interested in coming on my other show, which is called The Blender, at some point? I think
You
you'd be a
betcha.
good fit for that show because that's I want to go really deep with you on some of the things, maybe even like in the Russ Dizdar book. I think that would be a really good conversation. And I want my other audience to get a grip on that because I think that's very, very important. And Kelly, also, you, Gina, and I would love to get Joe, my alien guy, all on one show with Sylvia, and let's talk all just show how they all come together. And I'm going to try to get I know someone that ghost hunts supposedly. Maybe that would be
This is gonna
a
be
person to get
great.
on too. That would be that would be a really fun conversation to show the
Sure.
thread between them all.
Awesome. Sounds good.
That would be fun. Sylvia, any last words for Rescue the Fosters?
No, I think it's been a good show. I've enjoyed listening a lot tonight. But yeah, just
Yeah, it was amazing. Absolutely amazing. The chat loved it. Everybody, Adam, good to see you out there in the chat, bud. He's a big Russ Dizdar guy too. So he's like, I knew this guy was into Russ Dizdar.
Right.
Heard you talking. So yeah, that was fantastic. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us on Rumble, also on Foxhole. If you guys can click that thumbs up on your way out and subscribe if you feel so inclined, we would appreciate that. Oh, gosh, Kelly, I forgot to put up I want to put the flyer up one more time for Counting the Cost event. If you guys are interested in attending the Counting the Cost event down in Woodstock, Georgia, it's from October 4th through the 6th of this year. You can go to the website. That was warriorbridesministries.com, and you can get the tickets right there. And Kelly, you said something about 50% off earlier?
Yeah, there's just a few more days to the end of the month. 50% off for pastors and church leaders.
Excellent. Fantastic. Take advantage of that, guys. I'm going to see if a couple people from my church would want to go, especially my pastor. I think he would really enjoy that. He's definitely understands everything you guys are talking about. He's on the same page. So he's not one of those. That's why we started this new church called Resting Place here, and we believe God has called us to a specific town in our area where revival is going to start. So we're working on that aspect, but I think he would really benefit from this conference. So I'll see if he wants to go.
Love to have him.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate you, Nathan. Thank you so much. Kelly, thank you so much. Sylvia, as always, you can go to Sylvia's website, rescuethefosters.com, and get great information. If you have been a victim of abuse through CPS, the foster care system, adoption, please go to her website, reach out to Sylvia. If you want to tell your story on Rescue the Fosters, you're more than welcome to come on our show and give your story. And more importantly, if you are in any of these systems, if you are a social worker, if you worked for CPS, and you are ready to tell your story and tell the people what's really going on behind closed doors, we need you. We need people to stand up, be bold, and come out, be courageous, and tell your story. Lots of people, I always say I was one of those people in darkness. I didn't know this stuff was going on just 2.5 years ago. Megan Walsh woke me up, and Sylvia Beachy woke me up to what was going on, and I thank them so much. And now, if you are ready to fight and discuss what's going on and be a whistleblower like Sylvia was, we need you. So please reach out to Sylvia at Rescue the Fosters or Danielle at Rescue the Fosters too. Anyway, God bless everybody. We appreciate you. Have a great night. Take care.